So I like these guys that talk about what they did. And as you can see from those first two, stories, this guy's talking about what they did wrong, what happened bad, and his assessment of why. I'm going to continue. It is the account of the happenings as seen through the eyes of a divisional commander who in war, in my opinion and experience, is the main link between strategy and tactics and the main difference between perception and insight. So he's in a good position. He's kind of seeing what was, how that strategy of what the goal was, how that got interpreted into the ground. There are others who cherish macro-level viewing and tend to underrate ground realities. This is another thing that I always look for. Now, of course, I'm interested in what the generals say. Absolutely. I'm always interested in what the presidents say or what the prime minister says and how the generals took that and what they did with it and those broad strategies. I'm very interested in that. I always want to read about that. And what he's saying that there's others that cherish the macro-level viewing, which is what that is, the generals, and tend to underrate the ground realities. And I agree with him. I belong to the former category. Mine was termed a worm's view, and I preferred it that way. Meaning he is the guy that was on the ground, and this is what he saw, as if he was a worm on the ground. That's how on the ground he was. I knew exactly where I stood. It is this that produced considerable disillusionment, friction, and differences with superiors, superior headquarters, and planners. Once again, this is something that I always find intriguing. When you get these guys, these soldiers, people like Hackworth, people that are dedicated, lifelong military members, and they get this twist of disillusionment and suspicion against their higher headquarters. I kept shouting myself hoarse, but the juggernaut rolled on unheeding. So despite this guy's protests and talking and trying to explain, the juggernaut rolled on unheeding. There is a school of thought which says that mistakes were bound to be made in the complex and undertaking of projecting power outside our national geographical confines, and that these have to be taken in stride. So yeah, hey, look, we're going to have mistakes. They're going to happen. We just have to deal with them and move on. But he goes on. My contention is that if we consider ourselves professional soldiers and experts in concerned fields, then there was no need to and no excuse for committing most of these mistakes. After all, it was human lives and limbs which were being lost. We know we have an abundance of manpower, even cheap human lives in this country, but that does not give us the power of attorney to waste them. And I think that's a sentiment that anybody that's been on the front lines can understand, is that it's easy to write those checks from the government or from the rear echelon or from the safe place. Mm-hmm. But those checks that you're writing are human lives. And no one should write that check without a heavy burden on their mind. There is a good deal of I in the narration. It is not so much because of my ego to show up myself or to put others always in the dock, but simply because it is a compilation of what I, as a cog in the gigantic wheel, saw, felt, perceived, and got influenced by. I think it's interesting that this guy is saying, look, the book's about me and I apologize and I'm not trying to be egotistical. And actually, in reading that right now, I know that on multiple discussions that I've had about the book that Leif and I wrote, we're doing the same thing. We're like, look, hey, we're not it's not about us, it's about what we learned. Mm-hmm. And I think he's trying to make the same statement there. Sri Lanka was a fascinating assignment, the most challenging of my life, the most tense, the most rewarding. And I think that anybody that's been in tense combat will tell you that's the most rewarding thing that they will do in their life. I am grateful to my colleagues, subordinates, peers, and our magnificent men, steady, solid as they are. I have a high regard for the LTTE, for its discipline, dedication, determination, motivation, and technical expertise. So there he is. He's talking about the enemy. And you've heard me say it on here, is you have to respect your enemy. And there he is. He has high regard for the LTTE and its discipline and dedication and determination and motivation and their technical expertise. That's everything. Mm-hmm. But find little justification in its senseless, mullish, destructive insistence on continuation of military means in the search of an honorable solution to the Tamil problem in Sri Lanka. And he goes on, I thank some of my erstwhile subordinates for helping me refresh my memory. Most of them took me seriously in war and remained 2 steps ahead of me in their spheres. God bless them. So, like me, looking at the guys that worked with me and for me, I hold them in the highest regard for taking care of me. And he's saying the same thing. Fashion apart, I genuinely feel I must dedicate this personal account to the young officer, the young soldiers, and the Jaffna Tamils who made me a good soldier and a better human being in my own eyes. I think that's just an outstanding opening for a book.